Turning points change the course of our lives, whether it's a big decision, overcoming an obstacle or tragedy, or taking a leap of faith. These stories of inspiration and resilience are what Turning Point is all about. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Turning Point. I'm your host, Priya Sam, and today you're going to hear an interview that was recorded on IG Live on June 5th. My guest was musician and award-winning music supervisor, Dondréa Erauw. Dondréa and I are both Fanshawe College alumni, and we are so thrilled at Turning Point to have Fanshawe as a sponsor this season. Enjoy the interview.
Hello. All right. We are live. I always get so excited in like the moments leading up, like, all right, it's happening. I'm ready to bring this energy. Oh, it looks like we've got a lot of people joining us here. And for those of you joining, I'm going to keep you in suspense about who my guest is just for a moment longer here while we let a few people join. Oh, look at all the people joining us. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for hopping on this IG Live. In case you can't tell, this is a joint IG Live event between Turning Point and Fanshawe College alumni. I'm Priya Sam, the host of Turning Point. And okay, I think I've made you wait long enough. I'm going to introduce my guest now. I'm a proud Fanshawe alumni, as I think most of you know if you've tuned into these events before. And I'm so thrilled to be joined today by another Fanshawe alum, Dondréa Erauw. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is so great.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. For those of you who are just hopping on now, thank you for joining us. Dondréa and I are both Fanshawe alum, and Dondréa has an incredible career that we're going to hear all about tonight. She is a musician, and she also had a really impressive career as a music supervisor. So we're going to hear about how she ended up doing that work and what a music supervisor is, because I actually didn't even know what a music supervisor did until I met you, Dondréa. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love the Fanshawe sweaters, by the way.
Thank you.
Well
I've got a little collection of Fanshawe clothing now, which I love.
So great.
So, Dondréa, let's go back in time a little here to start, because I mentioned that music is obviously a big part of your life now, but I would love for everyone here to get some insight into how you first became interested in music and when it became a part of your life.
Oh my goodness. Very young age. Grew up with a very religious family. They're not religious anymore, but growing up very religious. So my parents played in the church band. My mom sang in the choir. My dad played bass and guitar, and my uncle played keys. And I remember getting up there really, really young and singing with my family. And then just, yeah, at 10 years old, I started taking vocal lessons. I learned guitar on my dad's guitar when I was like 15, and just started writing songs in elementary school and high school, and kind of just snowballed from there.
Wow, it sounds like it's always kind of been part of your life since you can remember and just in different capacities.
Yeah, it's always been a huge part of my life. I love that, like, my family plays instruments, and I surrounded myself with friends who played music too. So it was really nice to like start a band in high school and have that kind of sense of community. And I've just always had this passion for writing and playing, and yeah, it's just been a big part of my life since I was little.
I love that. And you actually even started recording some music in high school,
I
right?
did, yeah. I think I was 16 or so when I started recording some of the solo songs I was writing with a producer near town. And from there, this is very old school for people who are in the room. People may know what this is, but like MySpace was a very big deal.
Yes, I remember
MySpace.
MySpace.
This is aging me a little bit, but I put my music on MySpace, and it actually like got me a role on a kids TV show because of my music on MySpace. Like, a production company reached out to me, and I thought it was a scam at first, but they were like, "We really want you to come and play this role on this show. We love your music." And so I ignored it for a really long time, thinking that it was just someone being, scammy,
Yeah.
but it actually turned out to be a very real thing. And so then I went and did that when I was like 17, and that was very cool. And yeah, I just sort of like navigated from me there recording with a band in college that I was in, and we played a lot of like local shows in Ontario. We played with artists like Lights, which was really fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And to be doing that at such a young age, like I had to laugh at the message on MySpace because I remember like you would get weird messages on
Yeah,
MySpace sometimes,
totally.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Oh
like
yeah.
it's kind of like YouTube was in the early days. Like a lot of people got discovered there, so that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a very surreal thing to have that happen, but it was also extremely cool and very fun. Like you're 17 years old, and yeah, it was a journey. It was a really exciting time.
Yeah.
I loved it.
So tell us more about this show. Like, what was the role you were playing?
Okay, so it was a TVO like kids show, and it was called Schooled. And basically, the students and the teachers swapped places. So I became like the music teacher, and the teachers created a band, and we sort of did like a battle of the bands kind of
My
situation.
God.
And I helped them like learn how to play their instruments and songwrite, and did my own performing on the show. Had my band that I was in high school come out and be a part of it too, which was really fun. Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago though. That was like so long ago.
That's really cool. And it sounds like throughout the course of these early days, like in high school, during childhood, in college, you were playing a variety of music too.
Yeah, well, when I first started, it was just me and my guitar. And
Hmm.
then in high school, it was with a bunch of friends. And it was kind of like pop rock music. And then in college, I was in more of like a pop punk band, like doing a lot of headbanging and playing with a lot of like heavier bands in Hamilton and whatnot. So yeah, it's kind of like skimmed a few different genres, but it was fun. It was all fun.
Yeah, very cool. So this passion for music takes you to Fanshawe College's Music Industry Arts program. And tell me about your time there and how this sort of influenced the trajectory of your career.
Yeah, I really loved the music industry arts program because I took a year at Western thinking I was going to take like one of the music courses that was like a second year program. And I ended up actually hating Western like a lot. I don't want to throw shade, but it just wasn't for
Yeah.
me. I didn't feel like I fit in at all. It was a very weird year of my life. But it ultimately led me to the music industry arts program. And I'm really glad that I ended up going in the year that I did because the people I made friends with there and whatnot are like people I'm still friends with. A lot of people I worked with also in Toronto afterwards, like once I got into music supervision. So that was really cool. Um, but yeah, I was in this pop punk band. I really wanted to go into something related to music, whether that was focusing more on maybe writing and touring with the band that I was in, or finding something on the business side. And yeah, Fanshawe is sort of where I learned what music supervision was because I'd never really heard of it before. I'd obviously knew that like soundtracks were very cool and it was somebody's job to go and pick music for things. But we briefly touched on it in a lecture that we had. And I was like, ooh, that like, if this band stuff doesn't work out, that's like something I really want to look into getting into. And yeah, that's kind of where the seed was planted of becoming a potential music supervisor. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So this is so fascinating because I do feel like when you're younger, you only really know about the careers of like the people around you. So, right? Like if you didn't know someone who was a music supervisor, like how would you even know that that job existed? So that's really interesting that it kind of came up and it wasn't even like a class. It was like or a course on its own. It was just like this mention in a lecture that piqued your interest. So for everyone joining us who maybe doesn't know exactly what a music supervisor does, can you give us like a little more insight into what exactly the job entails?
Absolutely. So, music supervision is basically like a role that oversees all things music when it comes to a medium. So, that could be television, film, advertisements, promos, video games, anything in that regard. It also includes licensed songs as well as like finding composers and scoring projects. But yeah, that's basically like it in a nutshell.
So would you be working, would a project be like wrapped filming and then you're finding the music to go along with it? Or are you kind of there along the way, kind of building that soundtrack as the project is being recorded or filmed?
Great question. And so I worked in TV and film mediums specifically. So that's like what my experience is in conversation here. But like for television, you're very much so involved very early on. You're reading scripts before they film because a lot of the times you might need to clear a song for set if someone is singing a song or humming a song or there's a karaoke scene or a live band playing. Like you're involved very early on to make sure songs are cleared before they shoot. You're helping like find players or working with casting to find like actors who can pretend to play things. You're sometimes having to do pre-records. So if there's like a cover of something and someone's singing at like a wedding or something like that, you have to be in the studio, make sure that the recording is done before they shoot. So with television, you're very much so involved early on. It can be the same process for film, but also films that might not have any on-camera situations will be filmed and done and have like temp music and temp score, and then they'll hire a music supervisor to come and help find a composer to basically rescore the film, and also have the music supervisor basically like help replace songs they can't afford. And most of the time it is pretty much every song that's in a project you kind of have to replace because like budgets are getting smaller and it's tough in Canada especially. But yeah.
Okay, this is, yeah, like you're kind of blowing my mind here because I think this is one of those, like, of course, like soundtracks are so important. Like, people listen to
Yes.
the soundtrack of a movie after, right? Like, the music really makes or breaks a lot of scenes and, like, adds to the emotion and the way you're experiencing it. But yeah, I really had no idea until I met you that, I mean, it makes sense, of course. Like, this is a huge role, but I think I just never thought about what a critical part of a production that would be.
Yeah, honestly, we have a kind of running, I mean, it's not a running joke. It's a reality that basically like the music is another character in the film or show.
Yeah.
Like it's just as important as like the cast and, you know, the acting that's involved. And music's always so important to everybody when, you know, when it comes to projects and things like that. It really helps elevate the vibe. And
Yes.
nailing the vibe is really, you know, targeting your audience and like who you want it to be for. So music is always like, I feel very, very important. And a lot of the times, it's sort of kind of, I don't want to say it's an afterthought for a lot of producers or directors or studios and stuff, but like budgeting for music ahead of time is like so important, because if you don't and you have very little to work with, then you're kind of scrambling to get the right vibe. So that's like a big part of a music supervisor's job, is like managing expectations and kind of helping navigate like, well, this is the money we have to work with, so these are our options. Um, so yeah, music supervision is more than just like listening to playlists and sending songs. It's like, it's a lot of negotiating and doing like contract work and kind of acting like a lawyer. And yeah, managing expectations is like the biggest one. Especially when you're working with like maybe first time filmmakers or directors and stuff like that. They really just aren't aware of how to license music or how it works. So there's a lot of educating as you go in the role. So yeah, music supervisors wear a lot of hats. I will say, I
Yeah.
will say that. Yeah.
It sounds like it. Wow. So you find out about this career while you're at Fanshawe, and then you get this big break towards the end of your time there. This is really your first big turning point. So tell us what happened.
Yeah, so because I knew supervision was something I wanted to go into, um, a lot of the like stuff I was doing with my band at the time was sort of fizzling out a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm going to shift gears and start really focusing on like how to get into the industry, and that really led me to being like, I need to move to Toronto because that's like where the music industry is in Canada. And so I immediately started looking for jobs like after my first year of music industry arts, and was like, I'll come and intern for free. Like, I just want to be working in the summer and get some experience. Nothing unfortunately led to a position that summer, but the following year I kind of followed up with a lot of the companies I reached out to, and a music publishing company in Toronto was looking for someone to cover a leave of absence. So they were looking for like a temp position, basically a coordinator role. And I was like, I will do it. I will be there. Count me in. And it happened to be, I think, in like early April that they needed somebody, and I hadn't graduated school yet. Like I was still in school, like my final year. And I remember the school being super supportive, and like the program coordinator was like, this is like what you're here to do, is to get a job. So you should go and take this job, and you can come back and write your exams anytime. Like we'll figure it out. And that was like such a breath of fresh air that they were like, go and do the thing. So yeah, I very quickly, within like, I think a couple weeks, packed a suitcase and found a friend of a friend's place to sleep on a futon until I could find an apartment for myself, and started working at this publishing company. And I was there. I ended up being there for like a year and a half, doing like copyright and mechanical royalties, and sort of learning how our in-house creative person was pitching music to music supervisors. And yeah, that really helped me kind of wrap my head around the licensing aspect, like kind of learning how publishing works, which is very important when it comes to music supervision, because you're needing to license publishing for songs all the time. So that was very helpful. But yeah, that's kind of where I navigated to after Fanshawe.
Wow. That's incredible. And it's a good reminder of like one of the benefits of being in like a more intimate program like that, because you just can't do like, there's not the same flexibility at like a big school, right? Where you're like, hey, I got this amazing job opportunity. Can we like have some flexibility with me moving and coming back? Like, I just think like that was one of my favorite things about Fanshawe as well, was like kind of the intimate nature of the program and the ability to be flexible, and this focus on, hey, we want you to get into the industry. Like that's the most important thing.
I
So,
can't even tell you. I think because I was at Western before, I was fully expecting that. Like
mhm,
I was expecting to either not respond or be like, sorry, you're gonna have to finish out, like can't help you. But yeah, the school was so supportive, and I genuinely still talk about Fanshawe all the time. Like the 2 years I was there, well, I was there for 3 years, but like the 2 years that I was in the music industry arts program was truly some of the best years of my life. Like it was, that program is so awesome. Like they've really curated it really well, and I know it's changed a lot since I've graduated. But I've gone back and done guest lectures. Like when I was actively music supervising, every year I was there doing guest lectures, and was, like walking the halls of where I spent my youth, and talking to the students, that were in the class that year. And yeah, they've got a whole production set up now in one of the lecture halls, which is really cool. It's really performance based now, which I absolutely love. But yeah, I've always just been a big advocate for that school, because it really like helped me, get my career. Really, like it helped me give my wings and like,
yeah.
spread them, and away I went.
Totally, yes. This seems like a perfect time actually to just welcome all the new people who have joined us since we started. Hello, everyone. For those of you who maybe missed the beginning, this is a joint IG Live between Turning Point and Fanshawe College alumni. And I am speaking with the lovely Dondréa Erauw. Dondréa and I are both Fanshawe alumni, and we're really taking a trip through the early days of her career in music. We just talked about her getting her first job in the music supervision industry before she finished her time at college, moving to Toronto to start this job. And like, I wonder what you remember about some of those early days of getting, because Fanshawe is amazing at like preparing you for this, like what the industry is going to be like. But it's still a completely different world when you get there, of course.
Yeah, I will say the program really prepared me, because it's
Good.
intense. Like, I remember when we first started, they were like, this is a 4-year program kind of put into 2 years. So you're going to be doing a lot of work. And with like the late night studio times, and like really needing to be organized and showing up for, yourself and your classmates and stuff, it really truly did prepare me.
Amazing.
Yeah, I do remember my early days. I was very nervous. I was very nervous because I'm from a small town, so like moving to Toronto was like such a weird thing for me. Like I wasn't used to the city in that at that scale. So it was very overwhelming to me to even just be in the city, let alone like, my first time working at like an actual music related professional industry, because like the jobs I've had growing up are quite the opposite of that. So it was just really new and exciting, and I was full of anxiety and a little overwhelmed, but it was all good things. And I think like it's something I still think about to this day because it really scared me, and in a good way. And I feel like even now I love to do things that scare me still. I'm continuously trying to do that because it always sort of leads me to a new space or something exciting in life. And if not, I learn lessons, like, and I think I've always sort of been driven by that feeling. So that anxiety I felt when moving there, and my mom dropping me off in front of this stranger's house and sleeping on someone's futon, I was like, I am gonna make this work. And I did, and it blossomed and grew into this really beautiful thing, and I'm really grateful.
Yes, I mean, it grew like seemingly quickly as well because before long, so you started off in this like assistant role where you're working more on like the licensing side of things, and then I think your next job was as an assistant music supervisor. Is that right?
Well, basically, I got hired at this music supervision company. So I
Okay,
started as like a music coordinator, music assistant, music supervisor for the person who owned the company. Yeah.
amazing. Okay, so now you get used to the big city of Toronto, and then you make this pitch, next turning point, to move to an even bigger city and go to LA. So somebody actually asked in the questions, like, how do you feel about the city now? But I think this answers our question that you like were like got used to the big city and were ready for an even bigger city when you made this pitch. Is that right?
Yeah, I ended up, being in Toronto for like 10
Yep.
years before moving to LA. Uh, but yeah, I still love the city. I love both cities. They're drastically different for obvious reasons, but I love them both dearly. But I also very much so need the country at the same time. So I always have to try to divide my time because I can get easily overwhelmed in the city. It's loud, it's noisy, it's busy. I need my solitude. But then, I can't have my solitude for too long because I get a little antsy and I want to be at shows and surround myself with diversity and like good food and culture. And so I'm trying to find that balance of, city and small town, and I'm figuring it out.
Yeah, 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 I agree. I'm all about the balance. Like I love living in the city, but I think those breaks almost make you appreciate it more. Like you appreciate the break and then you're like, okay, I'm ready for that energy again. I'm ready to go back. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So during those 10 years, you worked on some really incredible projects and including into your time in LA. So can you give us some of the highlights of some of the shows that you worked on and or projects that you worked on during that time?
Yeah, totally. So my biggest project, claim to fame, is that I was the music supervisor on Degrassi for many years. I
So
worked on,
cool.
yeah, I know. I always make this joke that like if you meet someone who's Canadian, if you like ask them if they know someone who's worked on Degrassi, they usually
Yeah.
do, because there's so many people who worked on that show, and it's an incredible show that's been around for a really long time, and it truly was my favorite project to work on because the creators were amazing, the crew was awesome, and I'm not just saying that. Like I've worked on other shows that were a nightmare. But that show was so much fun. And I grew up loving Degrassi. Like I watched early Next Gen. So to say like I walked into this space as like a young 20 something year old getting to work on Degrassi was like truly a dream come true. Like I felt like I was on cloud nine. I was like, I've done it. I've peaked. I kind of can't really go much higher than this. But yeah, Degrassi was my biggest one. I worked on a Netflix series called Spinning Out that was like a figure skating sport drama, which was really cool, and lots of music in there and a lot of stuff I personally listened to, so I was very proud of that soundtrack. I worked on a CW show called Beauty and the Beast. I've worked on some really great films, Canadian films, one called North of Normal, another one called The Cuban, and The New Romantics. Yeah, those are just some to name a few.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah, that's so cool. And I love like the Degrassi connection to go from a show that you watch to a show that you got to work on. That's a really cool dream come true.
Yeah, I still pinch myself about it. It's like weird.
Yeah.
But awesome.
In a competitive labor market, postgraduate studies can really help to set you apart. And Fanshawe College offers more than 50 programs to do just that in under 1 year. There are full-time and part-time options available, and many of the programs are even offered online. You'll leave with specialized skills from their career-focused curriculum, and many programs even offer credit toward industry designations. You don't have to wait until September either. There are January start dates for some of these postgraduate programs. To find out more, visit fanshawec.ca/postgrad. Again, that's fanshawec.ca/postgrad. You can also click on the link in the show notes.
Are there any songs that like are particularly hard to license, or do you have any like stories that or like that maybe would be surprising to people?
Nothing I can like really share publicly, but yes, there are certain bands that like won't license songs. So you're always having to be like, well, like the Doors, for example, like they hardly ever clear. So there's like certain artists out there that will say no, no matter how much money you have. I've gotten into some like really unfortunate situations that include samples where like someone will sample another song and you're trying to clear it and can't do that because you gotta pay for the sample as well, and that can get very expensive. I've worked on a lot of projects where people want Drake, you know, they're like, well, you Degrassi, you got connections, and I'm like, it doesn't I love you, but it doesn't work like that. And it's not even up to just Drake, you know, like there's his publishing team and his label and all these other people you have to go through, and he samples stuff, and like, so it can get really complicated when you're clearing songs, but yeah, that's kind of just to name a little bit of it.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I understand like there would be a lot of complexities there. And that like the artists often it sounds like are pretty removed from like the people that you probably have to negotiate with too.
Most of the time, yes. Like if they're a well-known artist, absolutely. But if it's like an independent artist, you get to work a lot more hands-on with them directly or their manager. And that's like the stuff I took a lot of pride in. Like I love working with artists one-on-one and like getting people their first sync and helping pay off, you know, their the record and, you know, their dues to their producer and, you know, helping put out their next album and things like that. Like I got so many lovely notes from people who were like, because you placed this song, like it's streaming so much and I'm finding new fans. Like it was really like one of the perks to the job is that's kind of like what you want to do is like help elevate other artists. And because I'm also an artist, I understand the hustle and the grind, and like it's tough to kind of put yourself out there in unique ways. And I think sync licensing is like such a great space for that, because it is exposure, but at the same time you get paid for it. Like you actually get paid. So yes. It's a really amazing space to be a part of. And yeah.
And what an impact that you had on some of these artists starting out. Like that's something that, you know, maybe like you would the average person just wouldn't know about. But I love that. Like what a great aspect to your job too.
Yeah, I actually reconnected with one of the artists I did that for recently. So the Spinning Out show on Netflix, it like takes place in Idaho, and so I did a lot of research of like local artists in Idaho, and I really wanted to, you know, get it right and find the right sound and style. And I found this one artist, and I think I found one song on Spotify, but then I was lurking his SoundCloud, and I really wanted to license his music because it was kind of like Americana, and it was kind of perfect for this one bar restaurant that we were always in. And so I tried to reach out to him, and he had no contact information on the internet. And I reached out to a friend who knows someone who runs a music festival in Idaho. And I was like, this is a long shot, but could you ask your community if anyone knows who this artist is? Because I really want to license his songs. And I can't find his information anywhere. I had no contact information. And I kind of thought that it would come and go and I'd probably never hear from him or this artist, but I got contact information and I hit him up and we ended up licensing like 6 or 7 of his songs. And he was one of the artists that reached out to me and was like, you helped me pay for the record that I recorded. And I just wanted to thank you so much because I'd never had a sync in my life.
Wow.
And I can't even tell you how much this has helped me. And I like cried. I was like, that's so nice that you told me that, and also that happened. You also saved me a lot of stress because your music's great and it was perfect. But yeah, long story short, it's really nice when those things happen, and it feels very serendipitous. And I think a lot of other music supervisors maybe would have not gone that far to try to reach out and find contact information, but I was pretty committed to trying to find this person.
Yes. Oh, what a beautiful story. And so nice that you got to hear, how it really changed his life too. That's incredible.
Yeah, really, really special. And we've
Mm.
reconnected recently, and he told me, like, this morning actually I got a message from him, and because we chatted a few weeks ago, and he was like, what are you up to now? Because like I think you're done music supervising, but I don't really know like what you're up to. Like I'm kind of trying to figure out my next move. Like what should I do? And I was kind of telling him like getting into the sync licensing space would be huge. So finding like a sync agent to represent you to pitch your songs to music supervisors would like help you. And this morning he got in touch with me and was like, because of that phone call, I found a sync licensing company to represent me like literally yesterday. So it's so cool that you told me about that, because now I have this deal set up. And I was like, that's awesome. That's so
That's
cool. Makes me happy.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
We actually have a question from someone in our audience here
Cool.
who wants to know if your move to LA was something you were craving and you went all in and made the jump, or was it an opportunity that came to you and that you decided to take?
Great question. I think I was like starting to feel like I was ready for a change, but I didn't want to leave the company I was working for or leave supervision. So I kind of I went to LA for the Grammys in 2016 and just kind of got a feel for it to see if I liked it. And shocker, I did. I loved it so much. It kind of weirdly felt like home, like a secondary home. And so then I was like, all right, I'm going to need to figure out how to get myself here. And in Canada, when you're working in music supervision, there's a lot of co-productions that happen. So a lot of US production companies will come and film in Vancouver or Toronto or Halifax. And if they hire more Canadians, if they hire a Canadian music supervisor, they get a tax break. So our company was getting hired on some bigger projects like The Handmaid's Tale and shows like The Vikings or Vikings on History Channel and a few others. And they were starting to come in a little bit more. And I was like, it would make sense for us to have feet on the ground in the US so we could try and get more US work. And so, yeah, I kind of put a little business proposal together to say like, this is, I think would be amazing for the company, but also for our growth. And yeah, it happened very quickly and it was very exciting and also terrifying because that's a bigger move. That's a really big move. I went with like 3 suitcases and sold the rest of my life. So it was a pretty drastic change in life.
Yeah, that is massive. I mean, it's one thing to go from like London, Ontario to Toronto, but like Toronto to LA is a pretty huge move. But that's incredible
Yeah.
too that you were able to do it like with the company that you were working with. Because I feel like sometimes when you change so many things at once, like new country, new city, new job, it can be a lot. So that's like kind of nice that you were like same job, but you could just focus on adjusting to the new surroundings.
Yeah, it took a second to kind of get our bearings and figure out how to
Mhm.
be in 2 countries business wise. But yeah, I just went on an O1 visa and, was there for 3 years. And it also helped me figure out too, like, do I want to be here full time? Like, after this visa expires, do I still want to be here? See how I feel. And yeah, I'm still there. So it's working out.
Yeah, which is great. We love to hear that. We do have some new people joining us. So, hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. This is an IG Live joint event between Turning Point and Fanshawe alumni. And I am here with Dondréa Erauw, who is also a Fanshawe alum, and she's been telling us about her career story. So, after graduating from Fanshawe, she entered the music supervision industry, and 10 years after living in Toronto and working in the industry, she moved to LA. So that's the point that we're at right now, because after this, Dondréa, you have this really big turning point during COVID. So the early days of the pandemic, I remember you saying were actually okay for you.
Mhm.
But this period of time really led to a lot of self-reflection. So tell us about that and kind of what you experienced at this point in your career.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. COVID really truly was a blessing in disguise for me. I know not everyone can say that. It was very, very hard for a lot of people. So in that regard, I'm privileged and I understand my privilege for sure. Um, yeah, COVID really allowed me to slow down. And the thing about this job is that you're kind of running on a hamster wheel consistently until like you have to keep up that energy. Music supervisors, unfortunately, I'm going to be real with everyone, doesn't get paid. They don't get paid a lot, and there's no union supporting us. So music supervisors, unfortunately, do have to work like crazy hours and take on a lot of projects at once in order to sort of pay the bills. And it's really unfortunate and it's tough. So you kind of just have to grind to keep up. And I think COVID really stopped me and allowed me to kind of, like you said, self-reflect and process like, wow, I'm really burnt out from this. And I don't think I can sustain this workload anymore. And what's interesting is like I knew I wasn't the only one. I was having a lot of the same conversations with my music supervisor friends, and everyone was sort of feeling this way, but not really talking about it. And so yeah, I kind of just hit a point where I was like, once this, pandemic is lifted, I don't know if I can continue sustaining this role and go back to how hard I was working before. I think I need a break. And ultimately that thought led to like, no, I don't need just a break. I need to step away from it. Um, yeah, and that's kind of the beginning of it, was sort of like really truly being like, I'm more burnt out than I thought.
Mhm.
And yeah, that kind of led to like figuring out what to do next.
Do you remember a moment where you realized like, okay, this is what I need to step away from this, like this is what I need to do?
Yes. Yeah, it was my first time back to Canada since the pandemic. I went up to Muskoka and I was sitting on a dock and I was swimming in the lake and the sun was setting and I was with my partner, and I he's also in the music supervision world, and so I had turned to him and I was like, I think I need to quit. Like I think I'm done now. And he was like, great, let's figure it out. Like he wasn't even shocked. He was like, I think we knew this was coming. Because I was honestly very miserable. I was crying a lot. I was not sleeping. I was stressed. I was losing my hair. I was having health issues. My blood pressure was crazy high. It just like wasn't worth losing my health over. And so I think I just was like, why do I have to force myself to keep doing it if it's literally slowly killing me? Um, and that's kind of where I was like, the nature and being out away from technology, away from the city, really like helped me ground myself and figure that out. I think that's what I needed.
It's so important for us to have these conversations and talk about these experiences, because I think it can feel really isolating, and in the moment, like you can feel so alone, especially like I know you mentioned, once you started talking to your other friends in the industry, you realized a lot of you were feeling the same way, but it was like no one was talking about it, right? Because I think we get a lot of this messaging of like, you need to grind, you need to work hard, you need to keep up. And nowhere in there is there a message about prioritizing your health and your physical health, your mental health. And so I think it's really important, and I really appreciate you just being honest about that experience, because I think it helps other people to feel seen and heard, and to feel like their experiences are valid too. So after you went through, you have this realization, when you're at the lake and you kind of are away from the city. What happened once you made that decision to step back?
Well, I didn't have a backup plan. I did not have another job lined up. I I think I was so burnt out that I was like, I need a break, like truly I need a break. And thankfully I was again in a privileged situation where I could do that. So I took 6 months off, and I um, came home and visited family. I picked up a guitar again for the first time in like 12 years because I stopped playing when I was music supervising. The job is so intense. I was so focused on like succeeding at it that I kind of put that aside. And I realized there was a lot of voices in my head over the years that was like, you should try and like maybe pick up the guitar again, or like go co-write or perform. And I just never had the energy to do it. It just felt like too difficult. Um, and I was never inspired because I was dead by the end of the day. I just wanted to sleep. I wanted to turn off the world and check out. And I think then that led me to being like, I don't think I want my life to revolve around that. I want to be able to have the space to pick up the thing that inspires me, that I've been in love with since I was a kid. I want to be able to do that. And so then, yeah, with those 6 months off and kind of like trying to heal from this burnout, started taking more therapy and like picking up my guitar. And it really just led me to being like, I want to like songwrite more and perform more and kind of get back into this space, which in my head, I was kind of having a battle dialogue with like my ego and like my true self of like, wow, are you really going to step away from this career you spent 10 years building that like a million people would die to have, that makes you look great and helps all these artists, and like you're in a cool space and in a cool industry, to go and like write music and be a musician like a bajillion other bands and artists out there? And the answer was like, yeah, I really do want to go pick up my guitar again. I don't care if 5 people hear it. It's literally makes me so happy and feeds my soul, and to me that's like what matters. And I figured out how to make that my life now, where I do have work-life balance and I am able to still be in a space that is revolved around music on an industry side, because I'm more into like live sports and broadcasting, NHL, NBA, and MLB, like sports, like music on live television in the States, and playing music and writing and co-writing and recording and putting songs out for the first time since I was like in college, which is really cool. And I never would have been able to do that if I was still actively supervising. So yeah, I think like being in this creative space again has really been extremely fulfilling, and makes me like really proud that I've been like listening to my gut this whole time and figuring out, like I only have one chance at this life. So what is it that's going to make me happy and feel fulfilled? And that is surrounding myself with musicians and playing shows and writing. Like that's like all I want to do. So I'm doing it. I'm back doing it again.
I love that you got this clarity. Like once you had that time to slow down and, process everything that happened. And, I think it is important to have those like pro and con sort of moments. And like, yeah, our jobs can become, I don't know if you experience this, but just such a big part of our identity too. And so, yeah. Like, I know when I left television, I experienced a lot of that. Like, it was just such a big part of my identity that for me, a lot of the battle was just untangling, like, who am I without this career?
I cannot relate to that more. Yeah, when I left, it was really hard. Even though I knew it was the right choice, I felt like I was mourning a version of myself because I stepped away from this dream job. I was mourning that girl that moved to the city and worked really hard to get that job. I was mourning the people I was working with every day. Um, and that was the hardest part. And that took a long time to work through and process. That wasn't like okay, I thought about it and it's over. It's like that took a couple years for me to kind of get to that space of being like, who am I outside of this job? And it's really interesting because, like, again, with music supervision, it's like a lot of people want to send you music and are reaching out and always like asking about things. And once I stepped away, a lot of that quieted down, right? Like I didn't connect with a lot of those people anymore. And so it was really eye-opening to sort of be like, I don't want this job to be my identity. I don't want to be that job. Like, I am a person outside of that role. And every music supervisor is a person outside of that role. And just like you, for you, like, you were a person outside of the role you had in television. You know, like, you have to play a role in order for, the projects you were on or whatever to succeed. But you're a human being who has, like, dreams and health of your own that you have to focus on. And I think, unfortunately, in these entertainment spaces, whether it's music or film or television, it does sort of require you to commit losing a big part of yourself in order to do it. And I think there's a lot of people who look like they're very good at doing it, but I think if you were to truly ask them how they are, they would probably respond that they're pretty miserable and, like, not happy. Which is, like, really heartbreaking because these are such creative spaces, and I don't want to say, like, it and be super negative here. There are spaces, I think, in the entertainment world that you can thrive and flourish, especially if you find your right people. But it really is a grind no matter what avenue you're in, whether it's music or film. It's just, I think the nature of these creative spaces require you to be on that hamster wheel and to commit yourself to, like, the productivity. And we live in a world where, like, if you're not productive all the time, then you're failing. And I think, like, that's a lot of stuff I untangled and worked through. Was like, I was around people who, like, hardly slept, that were working all the time and expected me to work all the time. And I don't think that that's productive, and I don't think that's healthy. And so figuring out those boundaries for myself, I think, was just as important as, like, leaving and untangling myself and my identity from that role.
I think it gives other people a lot of hope too to hear this. And I know somebody messaged here, I love that about what you just said, because I think sometimes people stay out of fear too, of, like, oh, I fear of that unknown and what happens if I leave, and, like, if I lose this part of my identity. So that just that kind of reality, and also to be able to see where you are now in this place where you have work-life balance, and you're doing something that you love too, it's incredible.
Yeah, I honestly, like, my partner mentioned this the other day. He was just like, looking at you now compared to, like, 3 or 4 years ago, like, you're a different person in a way. Like, I'm just so much happier. Um, and yeah, it was a journey. It still is. Like, there's lots of things I'm, like, still unpacking and learning about myself. But I think the, like, listening to my gut was a big part of that. And I know I'm not alone. Like, I know so many people who feel that way. And I think, like, being open and publicly being able to talk about it makes people feel less alone. There's a couple people I saw, like, on Twitter when I was going through my phase, who stepped away from their big entertainment roles, and I was like, I was inspired. It inspired me. It gave me the, like, push I needed to be like, I will be okay. I can do this. I don't have to commit myself to this if it makes me unhappy. Like, I can figure it out. And I'm so glad that I did.
Oh, yeah, I'm so glad you did too. You can just see, this like lightness and happiness in the way you talk about where your life is today. So I'm just, yeah, happy to hear that. And thank you for sharing this journey. I wonder here, as you reflect back on, that very first turning point that we talked about when you got that first job in music supervision to then making this decision to leave and now get back to, that first love of yours, making music. What would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned along the way?
Oh my goodness. I think, I think, I think it would probably be one of two things. I think it would be number one, checking your ego. That was a big one. It was like having dialogue with it, understanding it, processing it, breaking it down. That's one. Two, I would say success is not linear. That is something I have learned from the get-go, is that it's not a linear thing. You can have moments of it throughout your whole life. And it truly is sort of like a reflection of life. Like, not everything's going to be great all the time, but everything's not going to be total shit either. Like, it will change and flux and flow. And so I think like understanding my successes over the years, and maybe like not being so hard on myself when I felt like I was a failure, even though I wasn't. Like, I think we can all be very hard on ourselves and feel like we're maybe not keeping up with a lot of people that we are surround ourselves with, or maybe on social media and all this stuff. And I think when we do that, it hinders our success. And so I think it's just trying to prioritize, like, again, chasing the things that scare you and doing things that kind of bring you a little fear, because that always leads to something. And understanding that, like, success is not linear. That would be probably my biggest turning point. Lesson learned.
Oh, yes. Thank you. That such good life lessons here, and I really appreciate you just taking us through this journey, and and being honest. I think it's really important to talk about the challenges along the way, and also to celebrate the successes, and being where you are today in a great place. So thank you so much, Dondréa, for sharing your story with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for asking. This was really cool to talk about. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
this is so great. And thank you to everyone who joined. For those of you who joined us late today and maybe missed the first part of the interview, this will be released as a Turning Point podcast. So you can follow me on Instagram, and I'll definitely post when the interview's available. It'll be available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So thanks everyone for joining. Huge thank you to Fanshawe alumni for sponsoring this event. And of course, thank you so much, Dondréa, for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
This is great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. And again, a huge thank you to Fanshawe College alumni for sponsoring this event. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star review. And I love hearing from you. You can find me on social media at Priya Sam. And you can also find out more about my coaching and keynote services at priyasam.com. Until next time, take good care of yourselves and of each other.